a motive behind this, and it's not in the best interest of our youth and our children and their education. Rather, it's in the best interest of our government, their control, their power, and so the way that it's set up, in my opinion, is not for the success of our students. It's for the maybe convenience of parents or the convenience of the staff within a school when their interests are taking over the education of our children. And thankfully, myself and many others who didn't do good in school will still do very well in the real world. But the school system shouldn't make us think that we're not smart, as well as many others. And imagine the amount of more progress you could have for children who are just giftedly talented in their abilities, as well as far as just IQ. But there has to be a better way to not only keep our children engaged, rather than just drugging them with Adderall if they don't focus in school and they're not paying attention, their grades aren't well enough. Maybe the way it's taught is really boring and it's inefficient. Maybe the way it's set up is set up for us to fail because we can't stay awake or we can't focus on so many things or digest the way it is. Maybe it's not the kids' fault that you should be, and maybe you shouldn't be drugging them when their brain is developing. Maybe the way you teach and the organization of the public school system is done inefficiently because maybe you guys are incompetent. Many of them are. And maybe there's some people that are a little bit more sinister. And why do I say that? Now, of course, there's always incompetence. There's always incompetence. There are always stupid people. And there's always people that are going to take advantage of the situation. Sure, I'm going to be a teacher because once I get a teaching job, it's really hard to fire me and I'm not going to put all my effort in. There's going to be those people, of course. And there's obviously parents who fall into the trap of the situation that our now society has orchestrated with a 2-parent household. Many of them split up and they all both have to work, leaving their children and their education to someone else, mostly the public school system. But for those people who I think are very aware of the conditions in our public school system, in our public schools, they're aware the teachers aren't that well. They're aware their kids can't read and write at the levels that they should. They're aware they're not very well read. Yet, they don't do anything about it. They're aware that they don't teach them about taxes of the government or sufficiently learn about the founding in the government of America. They're aware that they're teaching them falsehoods, that biology, men and women aren't a real thing. Now you can be whatever you want, because they're aware when the public is ignorant and when the public is confused, they're easy to manipulate and control. Makes sense, right? Why would they want you to know about taxes? Then you might question how they tax you. Why would they want you to know about history? Why would they want you to know about the idea of America? Because then you won't be able to objectively look at America versus the rest of the world and realize and acknowledge that you've grown up in the most privileged, prosperous, free society, diverse society that the world has ever seen. And if they don't teach you about the government and the way our government functions and the history of our government, knowing that actually we didn't always have an income tax. The 16th Amendment, when the income tax was ratified, that wasn't until 1913. We also didn't always have a Federal Reserve, a private bank that controls our monetary system. That was instituted in 1913. Why don't we learn these things? Because if we always thought of so much government control in our lives, why would we question it? That's just how it's always been. And if we don't really know history, what can we compare it to? And if we don't really know taxes, why would we ask about where our taxes are going? We like the idea of having our taxes and our government pay for everything and fix everything. Less risk for us, because we weren't taught to take calculated risk. We weren't taught to critically think. We were to remember, to repeat, to listen, to obey. And then, slowly and surely, decade after decade, year after year, we give up more of our rights, more of our freedoms for an ever-growing coercive government that teaches us nothing but takes everything from us. So we don't learn history because then we can't compare our history to other history. And then we can't learn from the mistakes of history to not repeat them today. We don't learn about taxes or investments or money in general. They don't want you to know about money. They want you to give them more tax money so then they can take control of your lives for your safety. It's for you. Not to mention our tax code is over 75,000 pages long because I'm sure that benefits the public. It's for your safety and it's for your benefit. It makes sense. It makes sense because it's not transparent. Because it's not transparent, we're too confused and then we don't ask questions. Why would they teach us how to read and write and communicate correctly and to adults and convincingly? Because when you can read, write, and communicate, you're deadly. And you can do all of that through your ideas because you learned how to critically think. Why do they not want you to learn how to critically think? They want you to remember, to repeat, to obey. And if you don't critically think and you can't communicate, write, and read ideas, well then, what ideas are you going to formulate and communicate to people that are not theirs? You're not. You're going to remember, repeat their talking points, and you're going to obey. Because they just indoctrinated you for years and years and years on what to believe and what to think. Not only by telling you what to think, but by not teaching you other ideas. Because when you don't know those other ideas, it's hard to think about them. And so that's what I've been thinking about for quite a few years now. Because like I said, I didn't think I was smart. I didn't believe it because I believed I had abilities and I knew I had potential. Thankfully, I was willing to take calculated risk and to bet on myself. But throughout all those years and reflecting back on it, especially now in the time of COVID, when they're masking our children and they're teaching them that gender and biology is not a figment of our imagination, men can be women, women can be men, and they're not teaching us the Federalist Paper and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, and that what America has built and comparing it to the rest of the world is the most privileged, prosperous, free society the world has ever seen. They don't want you to be an individual. They want you to be a part of a group identity. Because when you're an individual and you can critically think and you can read and you can learn and you can communicate and you can write, you can be opposition to them. And they don't want opposition. They want obedience. They want to stay in control. And that's why they cultivate a society where they are the option to control your children, to control their education. Don't worry about it, and it's free. Not only is it not free because you pay it in the form of taxes, and who knows where the vast majority of that tax money goes, it's your children's education and your children's mind that they're controlling. And we've been told to think that, or we've just come to believe that. Because when I grew up, I thought homeschooling was for weirdos. But recently I've been thinking about it more, and I had clients sweet people, who had children and they homeschooled all their children. And they made me think about it more, that there was like co-ops. You could either teach it yourself or you could work with other parents. And they have other people in the community to do field trips, to do other classes if you're unable to. And they give you curriculums, and there's actually a community of people who have done this. And they even said that they have noticed that children who are homeschooled actually communicate better, specifically with adults, because they have that interaction and they have those conversations with adults. And it tends to be that homeschoolers are pretty successful and they do cool things. I mean, they went into the Dominican Republic for 1 or 2 years and they learned Spanish. Their children, most of them are now bilingual. That's pretty awesome. But we were told, or at least somehow through society made to believe that homeschooling was for weirdos. And the public school system was, for the most part, the only option, and to some, maybe the best option. Now, of course, I'm sure there's private schools that are great, and I hope you do your research before going even into a private school, but I can promise you, my children, my future children, will never step foot in a public school. My idea would be to do a school, to be homeschooled, and now I don't think I would do it myself because I don't really want to, and I would love to be part of putting a curriculum together, read certain books and certain topics, but I would like to hire a teacher, someone who has good abilities to teach to children, and team up with other parents in my community, maybe 10 parents, maybe a little bit less, and rent out a space, and we help put the curriculum together, and they teach our children. And that way I have control of their education. I have control who teaches them. And I have control or an input into what it is that they're being taught and how it is that they're being taught. That's how it should be. We should raise our children and we should educate our children. We should not leave it up to the state and the government to raise our children and to educate our children. And if you don't see an issue or a conflict of interest that could be, I would ask you and plead you to give the topic a little bit more thought and a little bit more research. And you see the scores and the competence level of American youth declining. We give out more degrees and more graduations than we ever have, yet we have a public more ignorant than it's ever been. And when you compare that to other countries, we are declining in our education. And I can't help but ultimately think that there is a motive behind this, and it's not in the best interest of our youth and our children and their education. Rather, it's in the best interest of our government, their control, their power, and I don't know where that would lead us, but it doesn't seem to be going very well. So I just wanted to talk about that and kind of give you guys my insight of what I've been thinking about, and of course, always, I hope it was informative, interesting, entertaining a little bit, and it gave you something to think about. So if it did, please consider sharing, subscribing. I always appreciate you guys joining me and learning with me and kind of going along this educational journey of mine along with me. So I appreciate the support, and God bless. And I will see you guys soon. Thank you. Take care.